Burnout and resilience. Two words that are thrown around in our social society. Which one are you in right now? Because I can guarantee you now that you've been in one or the other at some point in the past 12 months. Now, I'm bringing Dr. Jill Hamilton into this conversation because there is something about this from just not from a health and fitness perspective, but also I know for a fact there is people turning up at GPs on a regular basis asking the question, how can I keep going whilst I'm still suffering or struggling with burnout? But this doesn't actually get us to the point of answering that question. And I'm going to give you some statistics in a minute. Once I brought Dr. Jill Hamilton into this conversation, I want you to be aware of these statistics before we get into the conversation, because chances are, and the number is quite frightening, you are one of these people. So, Dr. Jill Hamilton, welcome. We're into this conversation. We're talking about burnout and resilience. I know for a fact that this is something that we've been floating around with conversation for a while. I always struggle with burnout, and I'm going to put my hand up to that. This is a conversation that me and you are going to be having where I'm going to be probably saying a few things that are going to maybe shoot myself in the foot a little bit. But you are also a person that I know that has gone through burnout. You have, and you alluded to this before we jumped onto the podcast, you have an issue with the word resilience as well, which I completely understand. It doesn't have a very containing environment around it. You're left to feel like, what is resilience? So first of all, welcome. We're back again. We're always on these podcasts where we're talking about something that's impactful to somebody else's life, but this is a very truthful conversation to myself as well. I've not put a podcast out now for 5 to 6 weeks because I've got to a point where I'm accepting that I'm in burnout, and I've pulled back and said to myself, the podcast needs to be something that I need to pull back right now because I can't show up as me being me. But we kind of went backwards and forwards with messaging and said that we want to do something that is relevant to people right now. And I know for a fact you said to me that there is a lot of people that you deal with on a day-to-day basis inside the practice that are turning up with burnout and resilience issues. So first of all, what are you seeing on your side right now?
So a lot of the calls that we get on a daily basis are mental health issues. And I would say that some of the issues are related to sort of work stress, lifestyle, rather than say traumatic experiences or things like that. And people just don't really know where to turn. And I think on social media or through the workplace, they're getting this sort of constant narrative of be more resilient, push yourself a little bit harder, do more with less. And I think that's leading people to have quite low self-esteem, feeling like they're not particularly valuable. And I think if you're having that message driven in often enough, it settles, and you can end up with, symptoms of what we call burnout, especially if you are working very, very hard. And I think people as well, if they've got, say, a demanding job, they will often feel a lot of their identity is connected with their job role. So when they don't feel that they're performing, or they're told they're not performing, a lot of who they are and their identity is sort of pushed down and smashed, and they can often feel very low. And a lot of people, are coming thinking, do I need to have some medication? This is a medical issue. What can you do to help?
I'm going to get to that because I've got a question for you a little bit later on. But if you stay to the end of this podcast, what I'm going to give you is I'm going to give you a guide. I'm going to tell you where to go to pick this guide up as well. That's going to help you kind of frame where you're at with wellness right now. So it gives you a clear indicator as some things to focus on. Maybe you can actually draw some key points away from that. So at the end of this podcast, if you stay till that point, I'll give you that location as to where that's at so you can go and download it. But I'm going to throw these are the stats. So whilst we're talking about workplace, business, employment, and all of those kind of things, a lot of where burnout stems from. These stats are pulled as of last night and currently stand right now. 74% of adults in the UK alone report to feeling stressed or overwhelmed in the past 12 months and unable to cope. 79% of employees experience work-related stress or have cited that work is the primary cause of their current state. It's costing the UK economy £17.9 billion per year, and that's coming to the business cost. That's not government cost. That is the cost to every business accumulating the issue of how they're managing burnout inside of the workplace environments, the cultures that's actually being, let's say, pushed towards, like this whole resilience, push, more with less, like what you said a minute ago. and 27% are more likely to be involved in workplace accidents because they're already in this state of I can't physically cope with how to manage myself, my mentality. I'm not aware of those things right now. So there is a very big issue, even just in this country right now, with regards to how this is being managed, how people are looking after themselves, how workplace environments are setting themselves up for not even now success, but future success. I have a big issue with this because I'm a business owner. I'm a small business owner. And I see this from a sense of, I know what I need to do on a day-to-day basis to keep me ticking over. And my anxiety is kicking in right now because I can tell that I've got something that I want to get off my chest. And this is me being completely honest. And I've been in burnout numerous times over the years where I've got to a point and I've said, I just need to keep going one more step. When I get to this point, when I get to that goal or whatever it may be. And that's when I start leaning on that resilience. And you said that the social media element of this kind of out there with that drilling home all the time. Are you doing enough? Do one thing more. Are you achieving enough? Achieve one more goal. It's like, okay, but when am I recognizing that what I have done is good enough to that point where I know that I can say, pause for a second, regroup, and then go again? For me, for the past several months, I've been on a knife edge with burnout. I literally have, if you were to say a day was 100%, I wake up in the morning and I go, right, I'm probably anywhere between 90 to 100% ready for the day. By the end of the day, I'm at 0%. If anything comes across my plate that isn't planned for, isn't kind of anticipated, I'm at 110% for that day, and it is impacting the following day. And the problem that I'm having at the moment is I'm not giving myself that space to say to myself, well, at the end of today, what do I need to do for myself that regroups me, that regathers me, so I can actually go into tomorrow being more productive, being actually better focused, and I'm not always in this element of feeling burnt out. Because it takes one thing to tip the scale in the wrong direction, and all of a sudden, my week's upside down, and I can't cope. And I physically feel that. And then that becomes a projection on everything else. Example, this podcast. I do the radio on a weekly basis. 3 weeks ago, as of today, so where we're at right now, end of July 2024. 3 weeks ago, I sent a message into our group chat for the radio and I said, sorry guys, I'm not going to make it this week. Mental health is switched on right now, and I'm in a place where I need to place me over being public, and I couldn't give you the best version of me if I was to turn up on the radio tonight. And I got the absolute full support of everybody inside of the group that we have for the radio. But it made me aware that I'm now at a point where I'm putting things that I hold near and dear to me. So I love the radio. I love doing my podcast. I love doing all of these things that helps other people with their journey on what they're on, just bringing awareness to things. But when I'm telling myself that I've got to start putting those things that I'm enjoying to one side so I can regroup for myself, there is a problem that I'm not addressing. So I know that I fall into these statistics. I know that I fall into these percentages. And you're getting people like me coming across your doorstep, at the GP doorstep, on a daily practice, inside that daily practice of saying, well, I'm in a burnt out state. But what can I do to keep me moving forward? Because people are fearful that they'll lose their jobs, they'll lose their businesses. There's a fear behind what is driving burnout and what is driving being resilient. I would like to see how people are being managed, because I'm going to put my hand up again. I don't go into a GP for dealing with burnout because I've been through it numerous times. I know myself well enough that I'm fortunate to be able to manage those through conversations. I'm in regular contact with you as well. And it's not the first time that I've sent you a message saying, Jill, can I run this by you to see what you think of this? And you're giving me some clear constructive advice on the comeback of that. I'm fortunate to have that in my world, but most people don't have that. So if I was coming to you and saying, Dr. Jill Hamilton, I feel like I'm struggling, I'm emotionally burnt out, I have absolutely no desire or thrive or thrill in life right now, I'm literally on a hamster wheel, one step off that hamster wheel and it's absolutely game over. I don't know how to cope right now. What can you give me to keep me going? Because they're the words that I would use as an individual saying I need to keep going. What can you give me to keep going? What would you tell me?
Okay, so I think it's really important, and part of being a good GP is actually doing the consultation properly, sort of starting from a working right all the way through to B, C, D, E. So I think it's really important that I would take a good proper history from you to find out where we're going, where we're heading. And I think also to sort of have some clear demarcations about sort of, what is a mental health issue? What is somebody just navigating a really tricky set of circumstances? And actually it's hard. And you don't have a mental health issue if you're just finding hard things hard. Okay. And actually, what's the difference between somebody navigating, a tricky situation and then proper clinical burnout? And I think because they're all treated fairly differently, all right? So if somebody is absolutely manic or they're having a psychotic episode, I would treat that quite differently to, say, somebody that has a really difficult set of circumstances that has been, slowly becoming more and more burnt out and then, presents quite clinically burnt out. So I think it would be good to start with having a bit of an introduction about actually what burnout is. So burnout isn't just feeling a bit tired. It's not having a crappy day at work and feeling stressed, or it's not being a little bit anxious. It's more when you've had I would say it's not just that physical exhaustion, it's that emotional exhaustion. I'm sure you'll know when I say what the difference between those two things are. That physical exhaustion. Yeah. Physical exhaustion isn't always horrible. It's just, I'm really, really tired. I just need to go to bed, have a good sleep. And then you wake up in the morning and everything seems better. So that old adage, just go to sleep, everything will be better in the morning. For a lot of things, that's how, you will feel better in the morning after a good night's sleep. But actually, if you're going to bed physically and emotionally exhausted and you wake up and you feel just as rubbish as you did the night before, then that's quite a good indicator that, there's some form of burnout. So burnout is sort of probably a coin that's been termed for the last sort of between the 1980s and 1990s. And a psychologist called Christina Maslach, I think she is the person that sort of coined this and did a lot of the initial research on it. So she's sort of stated three sort of stepping stones that make you realize you may well be in burnout. So the first one that we've discussed is that emotional exhaustion. So with emotional exhaustion, it is more than just that I feel tired. It's you get to that point where just one more thing is going to completely make you lose everything. All right. You just, like you were saying, if something unplanned.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, I can get through my day, but if I get one unplanned thing, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go to 0 to 100 and skyrocket and totally lose it. Okay, so that's emotional exhaustion. One of the other ones is the second point is depersonalization. Okay, so depersonalization is where you become very cynical. You think everyone's against you. It's not necessarily paranoia, but you see somebody in front of you, and you might think, oh, they're lazy, they're rubbish, they're incompetent, or they're just trying to ruin my day. When they're just going around their daily business. So that's one thing with depersonalization, and also being really snappy. So if you're somebody that normally cares about who you work with, cares about your friends and your family and what they think, but you suddenly don't care at all anymore, and you just think, like, they're going to have it today, I'm just going to say it like it is. That's depersonalization. So where you wouldn't want to hurt somebody's feelings. And then the other thing, the third point is diminished sense of sort of personal accomplishment. So I think we all want to, whether when we show up in our lives, so whether that's being a parent or going to your place of work or, doing sport, you always want to sort of, do your best if you can. And I think when you stop caring about that, well, I'll just turn up to work and do my job and come home. That kind of thing. And also if you feel that you're turning up to work and you can't actually do what you want to do because a certain set of circumstances won't let you do it. And you're on that treadmill all the time, and you're just sort of you're not seeing any reward for it. All of those things are signs of burnout. So I think your original question wasn't it? How would I treat somebody? So I think I would
Yeah,
go.
and I mean, I would say literally, like not so much diagnose. I mean, but in the terminology of somebody like myself that would come to a GP for advice or guidance around this, like, tell me, like, what would you say to me if I came across the doorstep?
Yeah. So again, for some people, they're sort of pre-burnout, okay, and they just need that chat with somebody that's nice, that's understanding, that's not going to judge them, and and that might not even be a GP, that might be a family member, that might be a close friend that actually knows your warning signs. So I think we've talked about warning signs and what our personal warning signs are. So for me, I start struggling with actually talking. I can not find words. I can start trying to describe things rather than knowing what the words are. And I start losing things and I get panicked that I've lost, oh, where's my phone? Where's my wallet? And for me, those are my triggers. You're not functioning brilliantly. You need some annual leave. You need to go and take a holiday, or you need to go and do some exercise. Um, so I think sometimes it's just having a chat with somebody that knows you can maybe see your trigger points and sort of can bring you back down. But not everybody is lucky enough to have somebody like that. So what I would say is, I think with burnout, I would say there's the treatment for it. So if somebody came to me and they were expecting a pill or a tablet, I'd say if it was just burnout, that's probably not the best treatment. It would be trying to address the reasons why you're burnt out. So it sounds, without sounding like a cop out, it is actually a bigger piece of work than just taking a tablet. You're in a position, we need to get you out of that position, starting enjoying life, becoming more functional. And I think this is where we said before, I don't like that term resilience, because I think if you are a person that does try and look after themselves, they try and have some balance in their life, and then to be told, oh, just become a bit more resilient, let's put you on a course and you can learn how to, I think that's quite patronising for a lot of people. Because for me,
100%.
that message is, can you please do some more with less resources? And if
Yeah.
you're already working, like you're saying, at the top of your game, and somebody sort of recognises, oh, Andy always delivers, he always does what he says he does, should we just give him 10% more workload and see if he still delivers?
Don't get me started on that.
And then people are surprised when you sort of you can't carry on that hamster wheel. So I think
Can
this
I
is
just pick up here for a second, because I've got this like burning desire to talk about this, because this is so relevant to, and I wasn't expecting you to go here with this, and it sparked a need for me to be able to kind of communicate this. And I hope somebody that does listen to this, that is listening to this, whether it be now or in the future, takes what I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but also know that it's not the end of the world when you get to that point either. You just said there about somebody being at the peak of where they're at, and they always deliver, they always say they're going to do what they're going to do, they find some way, shape, or form to keep moving forwards. And that I use that terminology quite regularly, is keep moving forwards, keep looking. But keep moving forwards isn't always about continually taking a step forwards, because sometimes you need to be able to pull back to know that you can keep going forwards. And I am somebody that looks after my health. I do prioritize physical wellness because I know what it's going to do for me later on down the line in life. It's not about how I look. That's just a byproduct. For me, it's knowing what I'm doing with my body that's going to allow me to keep doing things later on down the line. So I know for a fact that it's not the physicality side, but I'm a business owner. I look after other people, which for me there's a duty of care inside of this as well. There's a responsibility to show up in a genuine, authentic way where I know that I can physically help somebody, and you carry a weight of that with you with every single person, whether they're somebody that's just on a health and weight loss kick, or whether that's somebody that I'm working with in a one-on-one capacity that I'm mentoring over a long period of time. I fully invest myself into that. You carry a weight of all of this as an individual, and to not address that and just say that I just need to be resilient. I need to find out what is a bit more resilience for me. How can I do a bit more with less energy, less resources, less whatever it is? How can I do more with that? More. And I've got to a point where you said something there. Like, one, I will say thank you for the compliment, because I was listening as you were saying that. And don't get me wrong, it did not pass me without me noticing that you said that, Andy, you're somebody that is at the peak. You're at somebody that delivers. And I recognize that I do, but I don't give myself the credit for me doing that. And I know that I should, because that is part of the reason as to why I'm at where I'm at currently. But I also think something that needs to be recognized is, just because I'm in the fitness industry and I am somebody that does all of these things doesn't make me inhuman. Just because you're a GP that has qualifications far superior to most people in this country to look after other individuals doesn't mean that you're inhuman. You still experience the same initial outcome as somebody else going through employment, running a business, not looking after their health. You still experience the same situations. Just because you may be seen to be in the health industry or in the personal care industry doesn't mean that you don't experience the same experience. And that's what I want somebody listening to this to really understand is, I know personal trainers, mentors, coaches, health professionals, GPs that have gone through all of these scenarios themselves and either feel like they get lost, they need to find a solution, they need something that helps them manage themselves back into feeling like they're in control again. And it is sometimes outside of our own personal environment that we need that support, which is like coming to a GP, speaking to a family or a friend or a colleague that you can have that one-on-one time with. Sometimes it's about being inside of a program that's something a bit more than what all that is. So I just wanted to recognize, for the person that's listening right now, that is a professional, is a business owner, is somebody that seems to be at the peak of where they're at currently, and they feel like they're a bit of a fraud because they're at their peak, but they're not managing themselves as well as they could be. It's okay. But please do something about it. Just like I know that I need to do something about it right now. Please, I'm begging you, do something about it before it puts you into a state where it becomes an unmanageable situation and it becomes a bigger situation where you feel like you are currently at that you could manage. I just wanted to say that right where we're at right now, because it's a message that I think people need to hear.
And I think one of the other things that I would say as well, I mean, I've done a lot of sort of work on this on myself, research, things like that. And I think above and beyond the basics, I'm getting a bit deeper here now, of, eating well, keeping hydrated, exercising, taking regular breaks. For me, actually, one of the things that has helped me is, I mean, I'm going to mention a few things. I think there's sort of slightly icky words that, you do hear on social media, but when you think about it a bit deeper, it is actually quite important. So things about being authentic, am I saying and telling people things because I really believe them, or are they things that I'm just saying because that's what I'm trained to do? And value as well. Am I having a value? Is when I have an interaction with a patient or a colleague or a staff member, is that actually a valuable interaction? And so I think about sort of authenticity. If I go back to values, what do I want to project to people? How do I want to live my life? In 100 years when I'm dead and gone and nobody, remembers me, or you don't have family that even knew you, a lot of things are very, very unimportant. But, what I would like people to think about me, oh, actually, she was quite authentic. She wasn't just saying things for the sake of it. She actually believed in these kind of things, whether they're right or wrong, and people agree with me. I think if it comes from a place of something that you hold is valuable. So, I mean, examples of this, I think, would be, for me, is, I'm at work, I'm a small business owner as well. If I see one part of our business working well, what I don't want to do is totally exploit that part of the business. You think that's working well for a reason because it's well resourced. The people doing that, say the nurses or healthcare assistants, they're motivated, they're doing a fantastic job. If you then just throw another 20% work at them, and expect, 20% more output, that's not going to happen. The wheels are going to come off, things are going to go wrong. And I think if you sort of think about how you actually can help with burnout, I think it's sort of, there's two parts to it. So organizationally, you can actually just be quite aware of what causes burnout and just being aware of it. And secondly, I think you can just make sure you're not, expecting ridiculous amounts of output and workload from people. Just give reasonable amounts of work, make sure you're supportive, and also create a sense of value. It's important that when people do a good job, a job well done, you tell them that they've done a good job and, they have made a difference. It's not just a tick box. And I certainly feel when I'm consulting with patients, my value isn't how many patients I've seen in a day. It's, have I made an impact? Have I helped everybody that's crossed the threshold and had a consultation with me? Now, it's difficult because in today's climate, I've got to consult with a certain number of people because, there are lots of people that need help. So it's not realistic for me to just help 6 people a day, but also me helping 45 people a day, but I'm not really helping them. I'm just sort of, giving them very surface level help and care. Again, they're going to come back and they're not going to have a satisfactory outcome. So I think for me, it's having that balance of that value. Do I feel that there's not a mismatch? And I think when there's a mismatch of your values and a mismatch of what you're doing, I think that can create burnout as well. So probably a least wordy way of saying that is, if you want to go and do a good job and you're 110% committed to doing that good job, but you feel you can't do it because of the constraints are placed on you, you're going to end up with a poor self-image. You're going to feel that, whatever I do is useless. And I think those kind of feelings lead to burnout. It's when you're just having roadblocks in the way. So I think one of the things I would say trying to help people is actually having a really good look at your life, have a good look at your job. I know it's not easy for people to leave jobs and, we've got to pay the bills and things, but there's absolutely no point in staying in a situation where you hate it. You've got to try and find some options for yourself. You've got to try and navigate a way where you're going to be able to go to work, take home a livable salary, enjoy what you're doing, finding that you have some value, that you're helping people or whatever it is you do for your job. But I think, this constant message of just do more with less is not helpful for anybody.
So I think there's a bigger play on all of this as well. So we're talking about the person at the level that's feeling the burnout, and you can kind of be the business owner. You can be the person that's at the peak, but all of a sudden you find yourself back down at the bottom again because you're the one that's now struggling with whatever this burnout is. And 110%, you have to get to the root cause as to what's creating the burnout. That I 110% support. And it can be it's very easy to ignore what those initial signs and triggers and whatever they all are that's going on for you at that point in time. It's easier to ignore them because you know that addressing them is going to change the course of where you're currently at. So if you have got pressure, you have got deadlines that are always needing to be met. If you've got pressure from management and business pressures from meeting financial costs and everything else that comes along with creating the burnout scenario, it doesn't make a difference whether you're the person at the peak or you're the person that's the employee. Burnout is burnout, and you're experiencing it in the same way as anybody else. Now, the level of burnout is different for every individual. It comes down to how that person's able to cope with certain outcomes and situations. But you're still experiencing something that's making life unbearable for you at that point in time, hard to cope, you're unable to process, and something needs to change. So you've got to get to that root cause. Now, the bigger play on this, and this is kind of where I'm going to throw the caveat in at this, is I don't want to sound like I'm hypocritical because I'm not the way that I'm coming from in the angle of this, but there is something to be said on how people set that workplace culture up and how that burnout is managed. Because if, for instance, a business owner, and again, this is where the hypocritical part, because I'm in the health industry, it would be, oh, well, he's just talking about health. But health is a driving factor of how you manage a lot of the burnout. It comes down to what is being managed as for you as the individual. if you've got a business owner that is solely their sole purpose of that business is to be financially benefited. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a team of 10, 100, 1,000 underneath you. All you are bothered about is what is that bottom line and is it in substantial profit? You are then a number in that whole chain of command between the person at the bottom and the person at the very top. You are merely a number and you do not matter. But if that business was to throw options in there that help manage that entire ecosystem inside of the company, does that business owner not think that better productivity, better production, better staff retention, better culture inside of those places are managed on a much more frequent basis, therefore alleviating pressure on the NHS, taking valuable resources away from the NHS? It makes everything a lot more easier in how the processes are managed. Yes, you're still going to need high-level professional help. I'm not going to say that nobody's going to experience burnout because, like you said, it'll be, oh, well, you're doing better, so we'll ask more of you with less. That scenario will still be there. But you're still going to have these other systems in place that help the eco-structure of a business as well as the NHS and how everything's happening and what's happening with the NHS as well. So looking at this from a bigger picture, is there more that we can do, not just individuals, but as people, as business owners, team management? How can we look at creating a better ecosystem, a better culture inside of our team, our business, or whatever it may be that improves burnout? This whole mindset around being resilient, I think being made to be resilient inside of the workplace is really the workplace saying, we want more from you. We want more from you. This is how we're going to ask for more from you. We're just going to show you how to be resilient to get to that point. But the consequence is you're probably going to end up likely in burnout at some point. You're going to end up feeling the repercussions of being resilient for longer than what you need to be, because there's no management behind how do I contain what that over expenditure of energy, emotional energy, whatever it may be, that creates the burnout. So I just think there's a bigger responsibility for everybody as a whole to how we look at this moving forwards and what we do with. We can do more for our own personal burnout situations. We can take stock, we can take note, we can take an understanding of where we're at and what we need. But how do we then make that better around us as well? Because I know that, and this is a behind the scenes for everybody, Dr. Jill Hamilton will get a message from me, and I will say, if Jill's burning the candle at both ends, and I can see you grinning now, Jill, Jill will get a message from me, and I will say, look, you're 110% outside of where you're at right now. We need to pull this back. What can we do working as a team to be able to say, this is where we're going to claw back this 10% to get you back in alignment? One of those icky words that you were kind of mentioning earlier. We'll get you back in alignment on how you can then stay at peak, still producing, but not experience the burnout because we're staying at 110% for too long. And that's a system that we've created where I recognize what you're doing and we communicate backwards and forwards because you've got that system around you now that allows you to be at peak for a longer period of time.
Yeah. And I think some of it as well is if I were to be looking for a job or I was giving somebody advice, I think I would be looking at companies' websites. I would be looking about their social responsibilities, and you really get a feeling for, I think, an employer as well. About how they look after their staff and what their vision and values are and things like that. And actually looking, well, how does that transfer? How do they help their staff? And I do believe that if you look after people and you help them and you help them meet their sort of values and it all aligns with the business, that people will just genuinely be more productive if they're looked after and they feel they've got sort of voices that are heard, rather than if you see something that works and then just expect it to work a bit harder. I think it's important that you have to go to work and do a job and function and provide for the business. That's obviously not negotiable because that's how employment works. But I think unfortunately, in today's sort of society, when something works, it's pushed and pushed till breaking point.
I completely agree. Like the breaking point is either it's the make or break part. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people these days they just exploit too much out of what they're trying to create as a good thing, and it goes one step further than what it needs to be. And then there's repercussions in what happens, because whether it be a greed thing, a now thing, because it's visibly seen in front of them, whatever the decision is that gets them to the point where it's extract more than what's actually currently there, then puts that problem in place of how now do we get out of this other situation we've created, not just burnout in individuals, but are we burning the business out? Are we burning the workforce out, the productivity out? This becomes a multi-layered scenario, not just at the one person that's in the marketing department that is working 14 hours a day because they're trying to meet the deadlines for all of these marketing projects that they've got going on. It's not just at one person, because the expectation moves up the chain. So can it be reviewed? Can it be seen that we're asking too much of individuals? And is that individual capable of meeting what's asked of them at 100%? Don't get me wrong. But if you're asking 120% all the time, sometimes 120% has to be given. Like as a business owner, there's been times that I've given in excess of hours that I know that I would like to give, but it's just part and parcel of the process. A conversation that me and you have on a very regular basis. But needs must in certain situations. Certain situations call for actions those to be taken. But in other scenarios, 120%, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, it's not healthy. It's really not healthy for anybody to sustain.
And I think you learn as well as you get older, you realise what's achievable, what's reasonable, and not. I mean, I certainly think back to my days as a junior doctor. I absolutely had no boundaries at all. I worked as much as I was told, and I did what was ever needed. I might have just been on a 12-hour shift, but if somebody didn't turn up, I'd stay on for 18. That was just, never got paid anymore. And but you do these things because you want to be, well, part of it, I loved the job, and I think and I did feel value. So I can't say that it's done me any damage, but I think if I had a child or somebody, say, going through doing a similar career course, I definitely would say just calm down. You don't have to say yes to everything. Looking after yourself is important. Make sure you're registered with a GP, that you eat properly, that you then don't go out and party really hard because you're so burnt out and you can't, everything is to excess. I think it's I certainly think there are certain careers that if I had children, or I was advising sort of younger people, that I would just be really careful, have some boundaries. You can be really, really productive, really efficient, and you can meet all your objectives at work, but you can also have a life outside. And one of the things that I think is really important to mention is that, yes, you do want to take your best self to work, but what you don't want to do is leave a point where you're just leaving all the leftovers for everything else. So your family get the leftovers, or socially, or, your exercise regime. That's just all, the best of you is taken out by work. And I think that's a really important point to focus on. Yes, turn up at work, be, the best version of yourself, but also try and make sure you've got enough to do that in other aspects of your life as well.
I love that. I'd love to be able to finish on that. Is there anything else that you'd like to be able to leave on this topic for anybody else that's listening?
No, I think it's balance. And I do think that if you're struggling, it's really important to speak to someone that you feel knows you really well, that can honestly say to you, yeah, you have, things aren't right, but, I've noticed this about you. So having somebody close you can speak to. If you do feel that it's more than just, physical tiredness, that you are emotionally exhausted, you feel quite, depersonalized, that you're becoming really cynical, and that you don't really feel a sense of achievement or accomplishment, and you just feel low and flat, then definitely you should be speaking to a GP. Even if it is just somebody to have a talk to you, to set you on the right path. Medications may not always be the best thing. Okay. In some instances, you might need something, but, just having an appointment with somebody that can talk through things. And it might be that you have to have 1 or 2 consultations before you find the right person that you gel with and that can help you. But I think just being told to work a bit harder, or with less resources isn't a way of sorting things out. I think sometimes just stepping back, assessing the situation, and just making sure that you are leaving something else behind for you rather than just work.
Awesome. Thank you. So, as I promised, if you head over to impacthealthclub.co.uk, click on the freebies section, there'll be a guide on there. That guide is it's Impact Wellness. Now, if you download the guide, the second to last page holds a bunch of information, and it also holds a link that you can actually use that puts you in contact with a bunch of support groups, charities, etc., that you could use no matter what stage you're at, whether you feel like it's a mental health thing or whether it's just something in the sense of I need to have some kind of organization to help me move forwards. If you're beyond the point of having the conversation with a family member, a loved one, a friend, colleague, whoever that may be, there is support on that second to last page that you can use. So impacthealthclub.co.uk, tap the freebies section, download the Impact Wellness Guide, and you will have everything inside of that guide that frames what wellness looks like. If you are missing any of those links, massively encourage you to take step on one, at least a few of those. That will help the situation. But that second to last page, it could be vital for you, and it gives you all of the solutions to maybe who do I need to speak to next. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Impact Your Evolution. We're here to stay. So make sure that you keep coming back. I'll catch you in the next one. You take care. Have an awesome day.